Welcome to the Three Guys podcast. I'm Reuel Sample from the Wilmington Conservative. On your left is Ben Schachtman from WHQR Radio. Ben, good to see you again.
Howdy.
And on your right, Nick Craig from the Nick Craig podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good to see you again.
Likewise.
Gents, it's been a few weeks, and we've had a little bit of activity in the community lately. Just a little bit. If you have been living under a rock these last couple of days, you'll be surprised to learn that there's been an election that's happened, and we're going to talk about it as soon as my tongue loosens up for this podcast. So
should have started drinking earlier.
or drinking after.
Yeah.
I think certain people were definitely drinking after the election.
Yes.
For various reasons.
For various reasons. So it was not a good day for Republicans, Nick.
Yeah, and it's not only was it not a good day for Republicans, it was the second election in a row in which Republicans got their clocks clean, swept. Mm-hmm. For the Wilmington City Council, the City Council, I should say, goes from having 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans to now 7-0, including the mayor, Bill Saffo, and his successful re-election effort there. And it's going to be interesting to see what that government structure looks like moving forward. Meanwhile, on the other side, you've got the county commission that has a 3 Republican, 2 Democrat majority there. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two government entities, which Ben, as a proud watcher of local government meetings, they seemingly don't like each other anyway. So I imagine this is only going to grow some of that animosity.
I think it's been a long time since they've had one of their joint meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a brief thaw. I think when Julia Olson Bozeman, Democrat, then turned Republican
out of nowhere.
Although the Republican Party did not want her.
Yeah.
There was a brief détente where they were doing some joint meetings to talk about planning, transportation, stuff like that. But relations have not been great between the city and the county. I don't know if this will make it that much worse. I mean, you had a Democrat majority. Now you have a complete, all 7 Democratic members of the council. So that's a nice way of saying I don't know if it could get worse.
That's fair.
Let's take a look at, we're not going to go through everything, but let's take a look at 2 races in particular. The mayor race, Bill Saffo.
Fascinating.
You're mayor for life. From last
I got some flack for
around.
saying that, but I'm sorry.
20 years is, for a lot of people in our community, that has literally been their entire lives.
Also, any aspiring mayoral candidates, prove me wrong.
So 12,093 votes. Now, these are all unofficial because they're not canvassed until November 14th? November 14th. Right. But 49% of the vote.
Yeah.
Does that surprise you?
No, it does not. What I think surprises me a little bit is how well Billy Craig did and how shellacked Jonathan Barfield did. And we can get granular if you want, but I just think we had talked about who might support Barfield. And I went a little bit precinct by precinct and looked at, majority black precincts that had supported other black candidates. And having talked to people in those neighborhoods who said explicitly, it is my plan to support black candidates in this election. There was one precinct where Barfield did take the top spot, but other ones that have historically supported black candidates that did not. So you look back to 2021, these are precincts that heavily supported Kevin Spears, for example, and they just did not turn out. I mean, Saffo won took the top spot in those precincts. And even in the precinct where Barfield did get the most votes, Saffo was not crazy far behind. It was like 10 points behind. And, so there was a lot of discussion about the racial dynamics of this race, and that didn't seem to play as big of a role as I think some people thought.
The people who voted for Jonathan Barfield, almost 21%.
Very low.
Very low.
Yeah.
Now,
well, and if I'm being honest, he seemingly didn't put any work into it. I mean, there was a few signs out and about.
A sign with a typo.
Yes, signed with a typo.
Wait, I don't know this.
The website said Barfield, I think it was Barfield ILM Mayor.
Something, and it was the other way around.
But there was only one M shared by ILM and Mayor. So if you put it in, Google's going to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
A little bit of signage, raised a little bit of money. I mean, in comparison to everybody else, raised a little bit of money. I spent a little bit of time out at early voting, not a crazy amount, but from all of the reports and everything I heard, he didn't spend a lot of time outed early voting, which is a huge time suck. I mean, it's a huge time commitment. You've got 19 days or 14 days of early voting, runs from 8 to 5 at a couple of locations before election day. So it's a big commitment, but Ben, it didn't seem like it was a serious run for mayor. Just hopefully something happens. But I mean, this is a guy that knows how to politic, knows how to win races, and there was seemingly no serious effort put into it.
I mean, I did see him at some events. He did come to all the forums. He was more engaged than some candidates.
Sure.
I could say. I have to wonder too about. We got to talk about that Novant video, where it was a 5 or 6 minute video where he sort of re-litigated or went back and explained, is a better way of putting it. Went back and explained his vote on the hospital sale.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I like the word that you used, relitigate. I think that's accurate.
Okay, let's go with that.
I think it very much
I
is.
think that's how it feels for a lot of people. And it was, I think for a lot of new residents, they were being introduced. It was an own goal for some people who didn't know about this issue and are now introduced to it and are now doing some Googling and are like, ooh. But also his defense struck some people. School board member Tim Merrick called this out on social media, a fellow Democrat, and said the way that Barfield said, I stand by my vote, but also it didn't matter because I was the fourth person to come along. Sort of Julia Osen-Bozeman, Woody White, and Pat Cusack already had the votes to do what they wanted to do. So it felt weird and unnecessary. And also, a 6-minute video on social media is
that's a long time.
It's a long time.
It's almost as long as this podcast. Yeah, it's a long time.
It's very close. So that felt weird to people.
We're looking for a third guy, by the way.
So yeah, I mean, he was not pounding the pavement as hard as Billy Craig or Bill Saffo.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Saffo was out in the corner of College and Oleander waving, looked like the guy like the guy dressed up as the tax lady or the guy selling the flipping around the mattress sign. I mean, Saffo put the work in, and the result shows. But to what Ben mentioned earlier, Republicans have clamored for a long time. We don't have a serious mayoral candidate. We don't have a mayoral candidate, and there's been a lot of elections recently where there either hasn't been a Republican candidate at the top and it's a nonpartisan election, but everybody knows. Or there's been just last minute random attempts that are not actual campaigns. And if there's one takeaway from this, a strong Republican candidate very well could become the mayor of Wilmington in the future. I don't know that that's completely off the table with the results that we saw Tuesday night.
Well, it absolutely is not off the table because you see Billy Craig coming in with 30% of the vote. That's almost 20 points behind the leader. But time and time again, we heard, "Who is Billy Craig? Who is Billy Craig?"
Sure.
And name recognition, especially in local politics, is the name of the game.
We'll put a pin in that because I'm starting to have some doubts for our name recognition. I still think it's the coin of the realm, but I see it eroding a little bit.
Really? Okay.
I do think, Craig struggled with some of the policy issues, and I don't think a lot of people vote on policy issues. I think Nick and I spend a lot more time thinking about that than the average Wilmingtonian does.
Yes, you and I have spent more time this week thinking about it than probably most voters in their entire lives.
But I think visibility is important. I think incumbency just carries tons of weight with it. And I think money matters, and we're going to talk about that too.
Yes.
But I think for a new candidate to break in, you have to have an incredible street team or a ton of advertising money or a little bit of both.
Yes.
And Craig didn't raise nearly as much money as Saffo did. So,
yes.
There's a lot of headwinds for him. And it's his first time in politics. I think, a stronger candidate or, Craig came back in 2 years. Things might look different. 30% of the vote for an untested political candidate who doesn't quite know his way around, doesn't have a ton of money, is kind of impressive. I mean, the last time we saw this was 2019. The ill-fated Devin Scott challenged Saffo. Scott didn't have a ton of money, but put a ton of effort into breaking into politics because he was an unknown. Mm-hmm. He went to everything. He went everywhere. It wasn't quite able to unseat Saffo, but came pretty close. It was like 7,000 and something. So the proof is in the track record. It can be done. It's just, who wants to do it?
Will we see Billy Craig or Jonathan Barfield again?
I'm going to start with Jonathan Barfield. I don't think so. I'm not saying he's not going to be around. He's a very well-established name in our community. He's got a lengthy, political track record. He was on Governor Stein's transition team, so he's well-connected and he's involved. I don't know that you'll see him in a county commission race or a city council race, but I mean, you look at the North Carolina legislature. I don't know exactly where Jonathan lives in town to be what district he would be in. If he wants to stay involved, sure, but I don't think it'll be in local. He won't be a city council member, mayor, or a county commissioner probably again. I think the results of this. What's your final tally for him on there?
For Jonathan,
just over 5,000.
Just over 5,000.
That's a pretty strong indication that you're not winning over the hearts and minds of people. And Ben talked about name ID. He has a hell of a lot of name ID. Yeah. Him and his father combined have been on the county commission for 40 years. I mean, you talk about the Rivenbarks and those names. A Barfield name is like that, and it obviously did not translate to the ballot. Plus, the Democrat Party completely screwed him and didn't endorse him.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that once we get to the city council.
Sure.
Billy Craig?
I don't know. I'd love to talk with him about this experience. Again, you got to give mere mortals credit when they step into the realm of establishment politics. That is tough. And I wouldn't blame anyone who gets a taste of it and goes, "Oh, no thanks." So if he goes on with whatever else is next in his life and we don't see him again, I don't think there's nothing embarrassing about that. It was an honest try. Mm-hmm. I'd have to ask him.
I got to give it to him. He did not become anybody else other than Billy Craig throughout this entire thing. He showed up in sweatpants and shorts and everything else and went out to talk to people. I walked around with him for a little bit and he would go up and shake hands with people. "Oh, I went to school with your mom," and things like that.
I noticed that as well. And that was something that I noticed with the early voting because of his 30-year experience within the community as being a member of WPD and then a mixture of that and the FBI task force. I mean, I was out at early voting with him a couple of weeks ago. And he met somebody who was from the town that his wife grew up in Western North Carolina, and they knew the family name. It was just like that kind of connection, which I think translates to a very, very strong second place showing, because that has an impact when you're voting and you're like, "Oh, this guy he's a real guy and he knows somebody that I know," and I mean that is how a lot of people make up their minds when they vote.
Now, before we go into the city council race, I just wanted to point out our brand new studio.
Yeah.
It's we finally have settled down into place. We're going to put some things up on the wall, but your support and your help in all this is making all this possible. So I think this is very manly. What did you call it? You call it industrial chic,
which is exactly the kind of thing an NPR guy would say.
Yes. Well, let's go on to the city council, because you talked about this at one point about the amount of money that went into this race, and I think it's fair to say that most of that went into the city council race.
So Saffo raised $130 something with a $20,000 loan from himself. Over $200K raised, and we'll know more by the end of the year. But over $200K raised by Collier and Waddell alone. Wow. So just a flash compared to 10 years ago. This is a staggering amount of money. I think it's closer to par for the course now, honestly. But yeah, that is a lot of money.
J.C. Lyle coming in first place, followed by Cassidy Santaguida and Chikima Clinton Quintana. I know I'm going to screw up that name. Three folks who are known in Wilmington, but are relatively new to politics.
I would say J.C. Lyle is the only one that I would describe as known in Wilmington. Cassidy is I don't know how long she's been in Wilmington, 10 or 15 years. I mean, so she's been around, but yes, first time in politics. And same thing with Chikima Clinton Quintana.
I would say Cassidy, I feel like Cassidy got a little bit of a boost just from running for commissioner. She didn't place very well. I thought it was a well-run campaign. Mm-hmm. And I think if nothing else, got her name out there a little bit. Like I said, it's very hard when it's the first time people have seen your name. And I've actually heard people, speculate on whether the last name Santaguida threw people a little bit.
Yeah, it did. It did, because I was talking to people about that.
Right. But I think that helped a little bit. But JC taking the top spot. Let's just talk about that for a second.
She's now the record. She now has the most votes of any Wilmington City Council candidate in history.
And again, going through precincts, a lot of, slightly Republican leading precincts where her and Luke Waddell top 2 spots. I mean, maybe Luke took the top 1, maybe she took the top 1, or she was in the top 3 with Luke and Richard Collier in very conservative.
I saw a lot of that, and
Yes.
I was surprised.
I wonder
to
if
see
that mystery mailer had anything to do with it.
Well, we're still trying. The mystery mailer that Ben is talking about, of course, is that coming from that North Carolinians for Prosperity or something like
Something
that.
It's the empowering the future. I'm getting this
Empowering
wrong.
the future. Yeah, I can't find who they are.
It's this guy who works for the state GOP. Appears to be freelancing and helping people do these. We don't know what the actual PAC is.
wow.
Yeah, well, he's a paid treasurer, the guy that's listed on the document. So he subs out his. I mean, you can pay him to be your treasurer.
Yeah, but we don't know who
doing
the
those
actual
reports.
money or philosophy behind it is. But I know that some of the candidates on that mailer were initially upset. Honestly, that could be one of the better things that happened to J.C. Lyle in this race because she just picked up a lot of moderate, unaffiliated, and even center right conservatives with that.
I can tell you that the Republican candidates were upset about it. They because if you didn't see the mailer, the mailer had Bill Saffo, J.C. Lyle, Luke Collier,
Luke and Richard
on it, and it was. People were asking questions about it, but
I'm sure.
Let's talk about Luke real quickly. That's a surprise that he came
biggest
in fourth.
surprise of the election for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be a tough election for Republicans. The last city council election was a tough one for Republicans. We talked a little bit about that on our last episode. Similar amounts of money spent by candidates, a lot of resources and a lot of time poured into it. I really thought Luke was going to be able to squeak out that third spot. I was not impressed at all, and I made this clear last time we spoke. I was not impressed at all with Shakima. I thought she did a terrible job in all of any of the videotaped, streamed online kind of events. And so I thought Luke, and I will admit, when the dump of the early voting and absentee by mail votes came out, I was like, Republicans are in great shape. There were only a couple hundred votes behind. And then as the night went on, the 3 Democrats were pretty much in lockstep unison, gaining every single precinct dump. It was just, they continued to grow, and Luke was never able to make up the advantage. And even with just 3 or 4 precincts left, he was down almost 1,200 votes, which you can't make up.
It's unsurpassable.
Not when the top vote getters got, what was it, 11,000, 12,000 votes?
Yeah.
You can't make up 1,200 votes when 12,000 wins you the contest.
Yeah, just objectively looking at this, I don't know how much more Waddell could have done.
No.
He ran a good campaign with good messaging, a ton of money, and a ton of public presence. He picked up 1,000 some votes over his 2021 performance, but just Democratic turnout was really strong. And if you look, those 3 candidates on the Democratic slate are really tightly clustered.
Yes.
And that to me just feels like people were just, those Democratic sample ballots were working magic.
Yeah.
I don't think I think there's lots of people who are sort of, politically eclectic or unaffiliated or maybe center left might have watched some of those forums and felt like Shakima needed more time to get her head around some of the policies or just, get into politics. But I don't think that's what happened. No. I think people got that sample flyer, saw those 3 names, and they went with that. And that's a really tough hill to climb. And as you guys have pointed out, Wilmington's already leaning blue. So Luke had his work cut out for him to start.
Yeah.
But just for what it's worth, credit where it's due, I don't know what else he possibly could have done.
Well,
outside of being a Democrat, I don't think there would have been anything else.
I think that would have been the second biggest surprise.
Yeah, but I'm serious. Yeah. Like outside of being on that Democrat endorsed pamphlet that Ben's talking about, I'm not sure if he would have. What was his final fundraising number? Was it one? It was like 100,000
over 132.
If he doubled that, let's just say 300,000. Yeah. I still don't know that is enough to. You could double your TV advertising. You could send out more mail. The end result margin, it's not. He didn't lose by 15 votes. The final tally is hundreds of votes, and I don't know that you pick up those hundreds of votes by spending more money on TV. He'd had a radio campaign, digital campaign all over the place. I think only 2 candidates bought TV, and that would have been Saffo and Luke, and it didn't matter.
So what was the big message coming from the Democrats? What inspired the Democrats to vote for Democrats?
So I've had some pushback from some folks in the Democratic world who my feeling is that this was a vote against.
Mm-hmm.
That for a couple of things. One, just animus against the Trump administration. This is a proxy war for people who are frustrated with the Trump administration. It's a variation on the midterm election pendulum swing. Mm-hmm. I also feel like people didn't feel like waiting for the midterms, and this felt like an opportunity to push back against the Republican Party writ large. Is that a good reason to make local election decisions? It's up to you.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was just anecdotally being out at the polls, whether it's the Northeast Library, the Senior Center, Rachel Freeman, CFCC. I heard that over and over again. It's not scientific, but
if you hear it,
I feel like that's a significant part of it. And then I also felt like that, again, the messaging was really strong. I feel like there are a lot of voters, especially new voters, who haven't watched the forums. They haven't read the interviews. They're not super policy savvy. And you're living lives. You got kids. You got a job. That's no disrespect. Mm-hmm. But you're like, oh, it's a last minute. And I know this because my own friends will text me and be like, who do I vote for? And I always tell them I can't tell you. But there's a lot of that. You wake up Tuesday morning and you're like,
I want to see those texts.
I will show you the texts. I am a scrupulous journalist, Reuel.
Oh, people text me who to vote for. I'm like, yeah, these are the candidates. Let's go.
I wish I could do that. I can't.
Write it down.
I send them the interviews and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to you for 8 hours. So I do feel like there's a lot of people who either went to early voting, but especially on election day, and just, if you lean a little bit left or more, they're like, okay, this is it. This is what I did. So a combination of low information voters who just kind of wanted some help, point in the right direction, and people who are pushing back against Trump. I know people who were high information voters really tapped in, who liked things that especially JC and Cassidy were saying. They were policy voters. It's just hard for me to believe there were that many policy driven voters.
Nick, I've got the results here from Charlotte where the Democrats just ran away with it. But in Wilmington, Republicans had a chance. They had a chance.
I don't know that I agree with that. And I mean, in Monday morning quarterbacking, which is my favorite thing to do, both in football and in politics, there was a lot of immediate aftermath from Republicans. I saw this in some Facebook pages over the last couple of days that development was the issue because of Luke and Richard's connection to real estate. That's why they lost. And I just don't know that there's any data or evidence to back that up. Had Republicans had a strong showing in Charlotte, which, by the way, the incumbent Democrat mayor, who has been hiding since August when Irina Zaruska got murdered, I mean, literally hiding, is not public, nowhere to be found, got 70% of the vote. You had Edwin Peacock, who currently sits on the Charlotte City Council, got annihilated in his reelection effort. Tark Bakari's wife, Krista Bakari, lost the District 6 seat, which Republicans have held for 25 years. All of that to be said, this was not a good night for Republicans anywhere across the state or country.
Look at Wrightsville Beach.
Yeah, I mean, you had Hank Miller, who's been on there for a significant period of time, lost.
A very reliably conservative town.
Yes.
That has no problem with the status quo.
Yes.
They're very happy with the way things are. And for Hank Miller, that's the second most shocking thing after Luke Waddell. I know not a lot of people are super invested in Wrightsville Beach politics, but just as a bellwether, maybe.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's why I push back a little bit on the notion of, if Luke didn't own a real estate company, or Richard, who, by the way, is not a realtor or in real estate, works for an engineering company, if they weren't associated with real estate, they would have won. I call BS on that rule, because we saw no other elections literally anywhere in the state of North Carolina where Republicans did well. So I don't buy into that at all. And I think anybody making that argument is scapegoating the practicality of, like Ben noted, Democrats are pissed off. Trump has been ruining everything that they support for 12 months now. They're pissed beyond belief. They want retribution, which makes sense. The same way that Republicans had successes in 21, Biden admin, government still shut down, bars and restaurants still closed. Republican voters said, to hell with this. That's when Luke and Luke got elected for the first time. Charlie got reelected as two Republicans. There's no data to back up the fact that the candidates were bad or that Republicans didn't message the issue. Their asses got handed to them up and down the entire United States.
I do want to ask this, because I'm curious what you guys think about this. And that there were some places, Charlotte in particular, where I think it was probably a lost cause. They were the 300, and that was not going to go well for them. But I did feel like in Wilmington there was a legitimate chance. And I feel like the GOP gave conservatives in Wilmington two good candidates for city council. And I talked to a lot of conservatives who were really excited about that. Mm-hmm. They thought, Collier was, again, he was, center right, moderate, enough with the party platform that they didn't feel queasy voting for him, but normal enough that they didn't, your nice suburban house folks didn't feel weird about voting for him, who could maybe come in and team up with Luke and bring, especially on fiscal issues, bring some balance to council. They were stoked about it. And then they didn't go to the polls.
Well, that was going to be my question for both of you. Is it fair to blame at least part of this on voters?
Not blame part of it. I mean, you blame all of it on voters.
And that was
terms of turnout.
That was Chairman John Hennon's point, was that there were the candidates were there, the numbers were there. At least from his point of view, he felt like the outreach work was put into it. I mean, we are talking. Turnout was better this time. 26.
26.
We're still getting an F, guys. Yeah. But I mean,
it's slightly better than 20.
But I mean, 2,000 more Republicans show up.
They win. They take not only win, they could take 2 seats.
They take 2 seats.
And I guess that's why I brought up Charlotte, because in Charlotte, even if every Republican showed up to vote.
Well, it's a little bit different in Charlotte with like the districted seats. If you look at the result for the Trisha Bakari's seat, that is a seat because Charlotte's such a large metro. They have like districted areas that are geographically.
We had wards. Yeah, things would be very different.
So it's not. There are at-large seats in which a Republican, who by the way is on the council right now, got literally annihilated. But so even in some Republican strongholds like District 6, which I noted Republicans have held for 25 years. Chris Bakari not only didn't win, I mean, she lost handedly. I mean, it was multiple percentage points, thousands of votes. It was a bad night for good Republican candidates. And let's just look at New Jersey. 4 years ago, the New Jersey governor's race was a 3-point gap with an incumbent in office. And the same candidate runs again 3 days ago and loses by like 15%. I mean, it's not even a close race this time.
The New Jersey feels very different to me than what happened in Wilmington. I agree with you.
But I'm just saying it was a trend everywhere across the country.
It does feel like a trend everywhere for some of the reasons I think we've talked about. I am curious, like, just what makes people stay home? And Democrats stay home too, Certainly this could have been a landslide if 2,000 more Democrats had showed up.
Sure.
And, if it would have taken a lot more support for Barfield. But in theory, that race might have looked a little bit different.
I think back to the point that you were making earlier, Ben. People are busy raising their family, doing stuff with their kids, soccer, sports, all of the fun activities.
Soccer's always the main culprit.
Well, of course, fake sports. So soccer's always the culprit. But people, and when you look at your engaged national voter, I'm not going to call them the MAGA voter, but your person that is in support of Donald Trump and what Republicans are doing in Washington, D.C., unless you are a 5 out of 5 voter, that doesn't translate to local elections. And the anecdote, fat, dumb, and happy, I mean, that's kind of where Republicans are right now. If you look at North Carolina as a whole, the legislature essentially has a supermajority for Republicans. Governor Stein really can't get a whole hell of a lot done. He can veto things, and he has. Most of them get overridden, not all, but most. Up in Washington, D.C., Trump is being Trump in the Oval Office. You've got Republicans beating the drum in Washington, D.C., why bother, Ben? Why vote? Everything's good for Republicans. Like, why? Who cares?
My conversation with folks right of center have borne that out a lot, especially more establishment Republican people. It's the people who they see the GOP getting everything they want. They're still frustrated. They still are suffering economically. Mm-hmm. They still haven't seen the Epstein files or whatever their thing is.
Sure.
Right? They're still angry, but they're sort of coming from the far right where they're mad at the establishment GOP. And that has caused some of them to sit out. I saw people criticizing Luke and, Collier for being, too establishment. And they were the only ones really pointing out the development stuff.
Of course.
Because it's the one weapon they could kind of wield.
When you have nothing else, you just take these guys on the far right, when there's no other thing else, you just take a left-wing talking point. Politics is a circle, so you just grab it from the other side and pull it over a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think, there was, if you're conservative in Wilmington, you are getting a lot of the things that you want.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure how motivating, the downtown crime issues, real though they are where for someone who lives in like, the suburban sprawl of Wilmington, property crime is up, but it's not like New York in the 70s up, And so is it an issue for a journalist? Yeah. Like, do I think, WPD's staffing issues is a chronic problem that I hope this new council fixes? Yeah. But like, I don't know, if you live in just the burbs, you're not really feeling it. And so you're like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So here's the big question is that the mainstream media is saying this is bad news for Republicans in the midterms. There's
been some media schadenfreude.
Yeah. There's those.
They're like,
German
again. No. Yeah. I will admit, I've heard a little bit of that. Yeah.
We've got a ton of stuff coming up next year. How much is this going to impact us for next year? I'll start with.
I mean, midterm elections are always bad for the party in charge. It's historically been like that, like literally forever. So I don't know that you can look at this, even though the election results Republicans saw across the country on Tuesday could very well bear out next year. It's not because of the 2025 municipal, locally, or some of the gubernatorial races across the country. It's going to be a tough year for Republicans. I think the economic issues that still are very real, even as the administration tries to claim that we're getting $600 gazillion worth of tariffs. People are still wondering why the hell everything is so expensive. So there's maybe the math is not mathing on that, and people are still feeling the pinch a little bit. Republicans have a great opportunity going into the midterms. Zohran Mamdani, I think, winning in New York City is a great punching bag for Trump and the Republicans. Democrats could use that as an opportunity to make the case that democratic socialism, which he said in his, this is not my tinfoil hat. He said it in his winning speech. I'm a proud Democrat socialist. Yeah. Maybe this is an opportunity for them to say, look at the successes we've had in New York over the last 6-8 months. Democratic socialism isn't that bad. Right. And so I think both parties have a great opportunity leading into next year.
Here's a question for you guys. And I don't do national politics, so I'm kind of a babe in the woods here. But it seems to me that there's got to be some pressure on Trump to take what happened on Tuesday and pivot a little bit. Not in terms of actual policies. I'm not saying that he would back off in any way on his economic policy, on his border policy, on how he's handling, foreign diplomacy, but maybe tone down the optics. And because this felt like such an emotional vibe-based election, not really an election based on well-reasoned policy decisions. It was just like, I'm mad and so I will do this, right? This is how I can take action. And so if Trump is not constantly trolling the left, if he's not doing the AI diarrhea videos, do you turn down, the energy on the Democratic voter?
No, absolutely not. I think Trump is actually doubling down. Is that it was just yesterday that he once again called for the folks to get rid of the nuclear option and get things done.
Yeah.
I think it's against both Trump's character and his policy to not double down. And he is a pragmatist and he sees, you're talking about the party in power has a hard time during the midterms.
Always.
Well, guess who's now the party in power in local spaces? It's the Democrats.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an interesting turn of events. You mentioned Mamdani. He's going to be the poster child of everything that the Republicans talk about next year.
Yeah, if he decides to go down that path, and just turning this back locally for a second. I mean, I think Democrats in the city of Wilmington have a huge burden to bear on this moving forward. You've got a lot of people in the immediate after fact wondering what's going to happen with property taxes. Ben mentioned earlier some of the issues with WPD staffing. When you look at the ideologies of the people on the city council now, it's going to be hard pressed for me to say, oh, this is an LEO law enforcement first group. They're just not. And I made this point on my podcast. Bill Saffo is the most conservative person on the Wilmington City Council by far. Yeah. Not even close. Playing a different game pretty much than everybody else on the council. That's a wild turn in politics.
That is a turn. I mean, it is interesting because I've talked to a lot of people who say, now we can get stuff done. And I remind them, like, we've had five on for some time. And there is a sense that there were, more moderate and more progressive Dems on council. And that's certainly true. And I think as excited as Democrats are to have 7F7, I do think over the next 2 years, they're going to have to put up or shut up because they ran on some really complicated issues, homelessness, affordable housing, public transportation, gentrification. And those are intractable issues in a lot of places. And even over the last couple of years, divided government was not really what was stopping them from doing anything. So with all due respect, I don't think the socialist apocalypse is coming. I think it's going to look similar in a way that will frustrate voters because they thought, okay, now finally we will, embrace these sort of left-leaning policies. And I mean, we'll see.
Did you see his message this morning from New York? Mamdani gets up there. Yeah, he gets up there and says, "Those of you who have stopped giving to my campaign, we need you to start giving again because all this is going to take money."
Well, I noticed he had a cash bar at his election night party, and a lot of people were using that as like, man, this guy wants to give you free bus rides, but he can't pay for your vodka soda. What a scumbag.
I am very curious about, again, like I lived in New York for a long time. I don't keep my finger on the pulse of the politics there, but a lot of the things he's talking about seem very unlikely to succeed in a short period of time.
Not only are they unlikely, he doesn't have the power control to do many of them.
That's New York City has always felt bigger than.
Yes.
The engine of New York City, the MTA, is toxic political football that everyone wants to take credit for. The governor and the mayor always want to take credit for it when it's going well. And then, when the Second Avenue subway is 35 years overdue, then they're both like, oh, no, that's a city thing. Or like, no, that's a state thing. The city just feels bigger than the mayor's office. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, you could freeze rents. New York is criminally unaffordable. Freezing rents would just freeze it at the current level of criminal unaffordability.
Yeah, $7,000 a month.
And the gap is bonkers. It's not like a gap that we could make up. There's some places, right, where, the average wages are lagging behind because of rent cartel pricing in a lot of cases for apartments. And like, if you could freeze them, which would be legally difficult, you might see the workforce catch up in 4 years. I don't think that really happens in large parts of NYC. And I say all that to say that, I do feel like this is like the Dune freedom speech. And if you're gonna go there, you kind of have to deliver. And it's hard it looks bad if you try to, redial in your expectations after you've won. I mean, that's happened on both parties in lots and lots of elections. But I feel like that will be more than some kind of, billionaire flight that leaves the city in flames. I feel like that'll be the thing that bites him in the ass, is having promised Liberation Day and then being like, all right, well, look, Third Avenue is a shit show. Like, I can't make the bus go any faster down Third Avenue.
Well, and I think to the point locally that you were just bringing up before, I mean, the Democrats, not only the three successful Democrats that won, but some of the Democrats on council, the homelessness issue, that's been discussed a lot. Transportation, this stuff does cost and take money. The city continues to deal with its budget issues. And Ben, to your point, I think it's going to be now put up or shut up. I mean, for all of the folks that are saying, oh, the Republicans didn't win because of overdevelopment rezoning, as Ben just pointed out, Democrats have held a 5-2 majority on that council now for the last 4 years.
That's right. And this is an interesting, again, this is very anecdotal, so not good political science, but I've met a couple people at the polls who had really gone around the horseshoe of politics a couple times. Mm-hmm. These are Bernie bros from 2016. Bernie gets the Night of the Long Knives. Clinton gets the nod. Then they drift towards MAGA, right? Then they're kind of not happy about how COVID goes down. They drift towards Biden. Then they're not happy how Biden handles things. They drift back towards Trump. And now they're sort of like, who's next? And they could I met some who were in a point in the cycle where they were all on board with Mamdani, and some who were still, ride or die for Trump. And I wonder, in the next election cycle, who gets the brunt of sort of the wrath of just unhappy voters.
It all depends if the policy of the Democrats, Mamdani, and the others fall apart within the next year or so.
I do think the money thing will be interesting because, as I've said, I think I said it on our podcast, we have a lot of these discussions without talking about price tags.
Yes.
And there are voters like me who are bleeding heart liberals who are like, yeah, I will pay more. I support some, kid growing up in the Caribbean, and I got to give to the ASPCA, and what a schmuck. Some of you must be thinking.
What a schmuck. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, thanks for solidifying.
That was the look on Nick's face. Was like, what a moron. But if you came to me personally and said, Ben, we're going to increase your tax rate by a little bit so we can build this homeless shelter, I would probably say yes. But that's not how government works, right? I don't get to tell. It's at the consent of the governed, right? So is everyone going to feel that way? I honestly don't know. And some of these are big ticket items,
Yes.
Bus mass transit, very expensive, a couple $1 million a mile, a homeless shelter, very expensive. Plus you got to piss off at least one neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
When you decide where you put it. And I think we will find out how blue Wilmington really is. And, we know people like this on both sides of the aisle who are fine, stating their values at a cocktail party, but if
That's right. Well, yeah, for my generation, is that everybody wanted nuclear power plants, just not in my backyard.
Yes.
So let's pivot a little bit, because I want to bring this up because these two seasoned media professionals.
No, don't call me that. That's highly inaccurate.
2 podcasts ago, stated very clearly.
Yes.
This shutdown's only going to last for 2 days.
I copped to it. I thought the Dems would cave.
So did I.
37 days, gentlemen.
Yeah.
30. Not one note, by the way, saying, Reuel, you were right.
Wait, what do you mean? On our last pre-election episode, I admitted I was wrong.
Yeah, but not in writing.
No, I said it here on your show. What do you mean?
Here.
So
I was wrong.
Outstanding. I'll frame that.
Right.
So 37 days. The Democrats have been emboldened by these big wins, but are you going to see them come back, or are you going to see the nuclear option?
The chaos gremlin in me wants to see the nuclear option just to see what happens. And I think both sides have been tempted. Obviously, they've used tactical nuclear options for appointments and other issues, and it would be interesting to see a Senate unchained and not have this, I don't know, this antiquated gentleman's agreement hold them back. On the other hand, if Trump convinces the Senate to do this, they could easily regret it in a couple of years. So I don't know. I do think the war for whose fault it is has been really interesting.
It has been interesting.
I thought the Democrats would continue to lose the war of whose fault it is.
But they haven't. They for some reason they have convinced folks somewhat. The media.
I'm not saying either side is totally demolishing, but it's the fact that it's not a clear cut.
Well, that's. I'm glad you bring up that point, because I've seen in the same day I've seen a CNN poll that's this is 100% the Democrats' fault. And then the same day, a Washington Post poll comes out and it's this is 100% the Republicans' fault. And I'm like, how the hell can 800 likely voters in 2 very reputable outlets produce these, a 60-point swing between the 2 polls? So I generally don't know who to blame for it. On the nuclear option, from a right-wing political standpoint, there's 2 kind of thoughts with it. One is, we got to get the government reopened starting on Friday, 10% reductions at 40 major airports, one of those being Charlotte Douglas. This is our option to do it. And to the response to what Ben just brought up, then, we could end up regretting this. The argument is, nothing stops the Democrats from doing the exact same thing when they get into power. So the question is, are you the one that pulls the pin for the grenade, or do you wait for them to pull it? So I'm kind of fence sitting a little bit on that. Trump really was banging that out a couple of weeks ago. He's seemingly hasn't mentioned it all. He still is talking about it, but it seemed like early last week he was just hammering.
That was the shiniest thing in front of him, and he did mention it earlier this week, which prompted a whole new flood of explainer articles from.
But he's spoken. I mean, he spoke in Miami for 7 hours practically yesterday, and it didn't come
cover
up
a lot of ground.
He does.
Evenly, but he covers a lot of ground.
So I don't know if he's assumingly he's spoken with Senator Thune and his people and Susie Wild and Miller. And so he seemed like still kind of trolling it out there a little bit, but if he was really hell bent on the filibuster, nuking and getting rid of the filibuster, he would be literally talking about it every hour of every day, which he's up 21 of those 24 hours. Yeah. So, I mean, Democrats had huge wins on Tuesday. We'll see what the TSA stuff does. Thanksgiving is about 2.5 weeks from now. Yeah. A lot of big travel holiday. One of the probably second biggest behind Christmas. So we'll see.
Again, back to my point. I thought the Democrats were doing an insufficient job of explaining to their base and the country writ large of why this is Republicans' fault, and why it's, even if it is our fault, why this is a worthy cause, why this is worth losing soldiers for. And I think SNAP was a gift to them.
Sure.
And the Trump administration doubling down. You talked about this in your podcast, and all the policy reasons for what the administration did aside, the optics of the Democrats being like, oh, Trump is starving poor people.
Oh yeah.
Go Democrats, go. Trump did more for their case for prolonging the shutdown than they were doing, I thought.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, what you're saying, like if we have a travel disaster going to Thanksgiving,
it's going to,
oh boy.
But it all comes down to who gets the most messaging out of blaming the other party.
Yes and no. And I've made this point consistently on my podcast. And for those that don't politically agree with me, they will not like what I'm saying. But I'll go back to this. There's nothing for the GOP to cave on with this. Now, you could give Democrats some of their wish list items, sure. But there's nothing to say, oh, well, fine, we're going to pull this wish list item out of the bill. We're going to pull that wish list.
There's nothing in the bill.
Because there's nothing in there. So that's what makes it, at the end of the day, this does not get resolved with Democrats getting what they want, because there's nothing, the GOP has no reason to give it to them, and there's nothing for the GOP to compromise on, using one of my favorite words in politics. There's nothing to compromise on to get the government back open.
If the GOP uses the nuclear option, Trump is saying, don't stop with the government reopening. Just go.
Yeah, that's got to be the approach. I mean, if you're going to break glass in case of emergency, you got to go balls to the wall with it, and you got to be ruthless with it.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the political tack.
I do think if you're going to start a bar fight, you should probably plan to win the bar fight.
Yeah.
Yes.
And by the way, I would say the same thing if I was a Democrat. And, for example, one of the discussions in years past has been, packing the Supreme Court. If you're going to get rid of the filibuster to do that, you got to do it, and you have to be very successful in doing so. You can't tiptoe around it. You got to go all out on it.
What the Republicans need to do is get rid of the filibuster, pass all these laws, and then make it difficult. Then put the filibuster back in, and then make it difficult to break the filibuster again. That's what they need to do. So,
again, the Senate is such a foreign land to most people, and just statesmen's addiction to history and tradition. I think if you break that, it stays broken. It is remarkable to me in 2025, in the era of Trump style politics, where Gavin Newsom is trying to do politics as a left Trump, right? That anyone still has this starched collar approach to politics. So I think once that's gone, I don't think you can put it back.
Well, I think once we passed the 17th Amendment, 100 years ago, and we started electing senators directly instead of having that whole vestiges of a grand republic started going down the toilet, I think.
Let me make just one more point on the filibuster, and this is a purely math thing. I don't like predicting political outcomes because it never works. The likelihood of Democrats getting control of the Senate next year is incredibly low. There's they need to flip 5 seats. Mm-hmm. They have a good chance here in North Carolina. That's one. They've got to defend a lot of important seats, including in Georgia. So from a purely political standpoint, the risk of losing the Senate next year, could it happen? Yes, but to me, the percentages are in single digits. The math is just not there for Democrats.
I think it's 4 to 6 years.
Yeah,
before they've got a running shot at it.
And so that might be part of the calculation is, okay, we're gonna blow this thing up, and fortunately we don't have to worry about losing control of it. Hopefully in 10 or 11 months when elections roll around. So I was wrong, Reuel. I'm sorry. I thought the government was going to reopen. It's
going to play on a loop as ASMR.
You better believe it. You better believe it. So, pivoting from politics, because it's been a week from politics. Things that you've noticed in the news. I'll start just so that you two can think about it. Because Trump is putting Nigeria back on the watch list. I don't know if you saw this.
So you said we're stepping away from politics. That is as political of a story as you can get.
What? 350,000 Christians killed over the last 20 years?
So, but I don't want to discount your point, but is this a political story or a non-political?
Well,
you just said
it's a little
stepping
bit of
away. You
both.
just said
I too am waiting for the pivot.
yeah, you're like you just said, guys, we're stepping away from politics. Trump, Nigeria terror list, and I'm like, well, that's
I'm going to go back to saying the two of you are wrong. So, so just something to think about is that we enjoy a whole bunch of freedom here. This is the non-politics part. We enjoy a whole bunch of freedom here, and we still have folks around the world of all religions being just killed simply because of what they believe.
Yeah,
we just got to remember that.
I feel like that is a thing that conservatives have won me over on over the years, and a large part of this came from just, believe it or not, my time in academics, like my time in the ivory tower, was reading Darkness at Noon.
Yeah,
Was reading literature from colonial and post-colonial Africa, where you're like, wow, it'll never be that bad. I will never do like a Shawshank crawl through a river of shit to escape a corrupt institution. I might get mad about it. I might say something on Facebook. I might even write a strongly worded blog post, but like I will never be chased through the streets by an armed government-backed militia because I am Jewish, because I am from the wrong tribe, because I was born on the wrong side of some colonial line that's left in the sand. Like, I would never experience that. Yeah. And a little perspective, I think, would sometimes help in political debate.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's one to what Ben is describing right now, I think that's one of the big, I think, frustrations people my age and my generation of, oh my God, Trump won or Republicans won. America is the darkest place that exists in society. And it's like, well, Jesus, folks, like you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back in history at all. You can literally look at what is happening now in other places and say, like Ben just noted, I will never, no matter how bad it gets here, it will never be that bad.
Never. Okay. What's on your mind?
I've got some political things. I've got some non-political.
Whatever
things.
you want.
So you tell me, you want something political or something non-political?
Whatever's on your mind.
There's been a couple of large internet scale outages over the last couple of probably about, I don't know, last month
Amazon
or so.
was down last week.
Yeah, Amazon. There's been some Microsoft issues, and it is interesting to see as companies of all sizes, large Fortune 500 companies, mid-size, and even very, very small businesses, as they have all adopted, and my background is in technology, but they've all adopted SaaS, software as a service, for literally everything they do. And when those major providers are down, these businesses can do nothing. Yeah. They can't turn the light on in the front of their shop. They can't take transactions. I mean, it adds an interesting perspective of, if there ever was a major, every 8 years or something, there's there's going to be a huge flare, big solar flare. Yeah. Like, what happens if everything breaks? Go back to the Curlington event back in the mid 1800s. If something like that were to truly happen, society, actually, we probably would look like some of those places that Ben was describing. Because nothing would happen. Literally nothing.
I should have said, I hope I will never experience that.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the non-techie version of that, because I experienced this in a much dumber way. And it was just, I had to be at the studio very early so I could ask people for money, because that's how public media works.
I thought you guys had lost all your funding. What do you mean? I was told that you were going out of business, Ben.
Reports of our death have been drastically exaggerated. I regret to inform you. So I went to, there's a little coffee bar in my apartment complex, so I could make coffee without waking my wife up, because I try to be conscientious occasionally. And it was out because the internet connection was out.
Oh, very nice.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And the way this coffee machine works is you scan it with a smartphone and you put in what you want your order to be, and then it spits it out. The little gnomes inside ground the beans and make the coffee.
Wow.
So, right. But because the internet connection was down, there wasn't out of coffee. It wasn't a power outage. It wasn't a water main break. The internet connection was out. Because there was no internet, I couldn't have coffee. And I thought, this is the dystopian nightmare that sci-fi writers have been warning us about for, this for decades.
So there's a great phrase for that, and you'll have to excuse my profanity, but it is called the Internet of Shit. And that is exactly what Ben is describing.
Yes, I experienced it.
When the internet doesn't work and you can't use your fridge, your washing machine, your toaster oven, you can't get coffee.
And the same, so on the way to work, someone sent me, it was a video from a podcast, and they were talking about how Samsung is going to debut ads on the digital screen on its, and I can imagine being like, starving, and I have to watch a 30-second ad before I can open my refrigerator door. And I was like, the Luddites were right. The Luddites were right.
I can just picture you there in your bathrobe, just looking at this coffee it's right there.
It's right there.
But you can't do anything.
Did you think about breaking it and just like trying? Was there like I'm sure it was like one of the like nice ones with like the glass where you could see the beans. Was there a part of you that was like, if I just like push this thing hard enough, I could probably make some coffee?
I did think about the last result of all non-tech savvy people, which was extreme violence. And the caffeine withdrawal was helping me.
Yeah.
In Star Trek, there's always a manual override, but not for this.
Not for this.
So what do you got, Ben?
Oh man, what do we got? Do we do politics or not politics?
Whatever's up on the top of your brain.
I can't believe that we are already doing the primary election for 2026. I'm sorry.
What do you mean? It's like it just started. It's been going on for like 5 months now.
I know. Like we're already, I've heard rumors of a sheriff's primary. I know there will be a primary for the Democratic candidates for county commissioner. Good Lord. We should have a moratorium.
When is registration?
A moratorium on construction, no more apartments, and moratorium on elections.
Yes, at least a month. Give us a month.
We're just going to shut everything down just for a couple of years.
No, I thought about that, and I thought about this year was kind of underwhelming for October surprises.
We had that one with the voter thing that just didn't really go anywhere.
It was very curious, and I got a lot of hate mail for writing about it from folks on the left, but I made my defenses online. I won't go back to that. But usually we get an avalanche of stuff. And this year there was that and a couple other little things, but nothing that was, usually it's like someone has been sitting on this, like a dossier for a while. And it's, that last couple days, I'm just waiting. And
it means that the parties probably did their jobs vetting their votes.
Well, yeah, and it kind of goes to, Bill Saffo's been the mayor for 20 years. There's plenty of issues and things that people can criticize him for, but none of it's new. None of it's a secret. You go on Instagram and you see the video. Who are the 5 most wealthiest people in Wilmington? And he's number 2 or 3. So it's not a secret at this point. So it's hard when you've got, and same thing with Jonathan Barfield. In public office for 16 plus years. What's the bombshell going to be?
Yeah. Well, we're going to start wrapping up. WHQR is in the middle of their is it an annual fundraiser?
And we just wrapped up our twice annual.
Okay. Some people call that a semi-annual.
Some people do. I'm saying I'm holding out that it could one day be an annual, but I don't think we're there. I don't think we're anywhere near there. Yeah, it's it's an insane way to fund journalism. But it's less insane than all the other ways I've tried.
Okay.
I've worked for paywalls. I've worked for subscription models, and so this is as insane as this one is the least crazy.
Well, if you've got a couple bucks, check out WHQR.
Yeah.
And Ben does some really good stuff. Your articles on all this stuff have been very, very good. Nick, over there on the Nick Craig Show, you're doing
no
well?
corporate media as well. I have to beg. I beg for money as well. So it's going.
It's a better model than having a corporate overlord.
It kind of is, and it's been an interesting transition. I left the radio gig here in July of last year, and it's very cool. And I had some experiences out working early voting where people not only appreciate what you're saying, but appreciate it enough to throw you $10, $15, $20, $50. It is a very cool model, and it's growing. It is probably the fastest increasing vertical within media right now.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of different names: creator funded, self funded, whatever. So it's very cool.
People throw their support behind what they like.
I do that with creators and things outside of politics that I enjoy, and it's cool. Yeah, everything going well over at the Nick Craig Show.
Outstanding. And we have added at the Wilmington Standard a daily update that goes out every morning, about 2 minutes long. So, and we could always use your support as well. So check us out at the Wilmington. We're just 3 guys just asking for money. So
when you really boil it down,
really are.
So hopefully the city doesn't outlaw us. They'll put in some zoning ordinance and kick us out.
So, folks, thanks for listening. Please comment, like, and subscribe on all of your podcast platforms. We really do want to hear from you. We read every single comment that you leave. And up to this point, there haven't been that many. So please let us know what you think. Please let us know what you voted for in the Wilmington elections. We really would like to know that as well. So for Nick Craig and Ben Schachtman, I'm Reuel Sample. Thanks for listening.